You're listening to NFRN The Drive, your place for NFRN, NASCAR, and motorsport news. Well, hello again, everybody. Colin Denton here with NFRN The Drive. Welcome back to another episode, and we have got a big day in store today. This is the opening weekend for the NFRN Season 2. We'll see the Elite Cup Series, of course, but we've got the introduction of brand new series, the Amateur Cup Series and the Truck Series also having their races today. We'll see all of those later on, but of course we've got some news to talk about, both in the NFRN and NASCAR realms. We'll get to that right away. Let's start off with some Clash highlights. Last month we saw the NFRN Clash at Columbia take place. Our 12 returning veteran drivers take to Columbia. A lot of bumping early on, a lot of aggression. But here on lap number 7, heading into turn number 3, contact between Stephen Willie and Colin Lindsay. That sends William Brock up onto the wall. He'll ride it along for several yards and then finally get back on all fours. You'll see from John Arndt's view, there is the contact that Willie and Lindsay make. They'll spin up into Brock. Later on green flag pit stops, Van Arsdale's trying to avoid the pace car coming off pit road, and he makes hard contact with Reese Butcher. That takes them both out of contention for this one. Coming out of turn number 2, William Brock, who is slow at the point. John Arndt gets into him, and then as we come around for the white flag lap, coming to the checkered, Stephen Willie is going to hold up Tyler Markell on the high line. Noah Cars makes the move to the low line, and he grabs his first ever victory in NFRN competition. He'll get it in the Clash at Columbia. So you see our results from this one. Noah Cars is going to have eligibility for all the future Clash events, so long as he runs in the NFRN Elite or Amateur Cup Series. Tyler Markell, after having that opportunity there, he would end up finishing 4th. John Arndt's luck with the slower cars moved him back to 7th place. Van Arsdale and Butcher finished 8th and 9th respectively. But beyond that, all 12 cars were able to stay on the track and see the checkered flag. Not all of them were able to finish on the lead lap, though. And we are now joined by the winner of the Clash at Columbia, Noah Cars, joining us via Skype. Now, take us through that finish. It was a very wild finish. There was a lot of cars to pass, and obviously that lapped car came into effect. But how were you able to make that last lap?
Well, it sort of started when we were coming down the tri-oval, coming to the final lap. It was kind of hard for me to make that decision of should I just stay in line or should I go move beneath the one to make a pass. I decided to put all the chips on the table, and apparently it worked out pretty good. And then when I saw the 62 coming down the backstretch, he was going very slow, and I got really nervous that he was going to come up in front of me and probably wrecked me or something. But, I mean, it was good. I was getting really nervous. I was coming down the backstretch, and I saw him. It was in the middle. I didn't know what to do, so I decided to go low, and I was hoping he didn't go low, and I made it just in time. And apparently I just managed to cross the finish line with nobody behind me, so... But it was a pretty interesting finish. I decided to use some strategy skills I learned from last season and managed to pay off pretty good at the Clash.
Now, you weren't able to grab a win last season, but you got your first one here, and you had a couple of decent finishes last season as well. How are you going to use this win in order to gain momentum into the regular season and try to get into your first chase?
Well, now that we know that we have the engine power to do it, I'm pretty sure as long as I manage to make small moves at a time and probably keep making those moves simply, I think we could be able to score our first points win this season.
And you've also got a little bit of help with the introduction of teams you have added on a teammate at Thunderhawk Motorsports, Caleb Campbell in the number 41 Chevrolet. How do you think that is going to help or hurt you guys moving forward as well?
I think because now we have an addition of a teammate, I think we could probably work together. He can help me get my first points win. I can help him get his first points win. But after running in some offline series in a long time, I think it can work out pretty good. And hopefully we'll get ourselves some wins this season.
And I think I'll end on this. How, being a veteran, do you think it is going to be racing against a field that is mostly dominated by rookies this season?
I think just because I've ran a little bit more than them, I think it'll be a little bit easier to maybe pull off some wins because I've had more experience on these types of tracks, and hopefully the rookies aren't really that hyper, and we could maybe get a couple wins this year.
All right, well, that is Noah Cars joining us here at NFRN The Drive. Thank you for coming in and speaking with us today, Noah.
You are welcome.
And now we've got some NASCAR headlines to look at. There was some big news that came out earlier this week heading in the Coke 600 week, and one of the biggest stories is probably the release of the 2018 schedule, which had some big changes to the Cup Series. There were some other things that are going to bleed into the Xfinity and Truck Series as well, based on the changes of dates that these guys made, but the Cup Series is what we're primarily going to focus on. The first racing action of the season, which won't necessarily count for points, but Daytona's going to have the Clash and Daytona 500 qualifying on the same day. Obviously, that kind of happened earlier this year, which wasn't scheduled on Saturday night. It got rained out and postponed, the Clash did, to Sunday morning, early afternoon, and now it looks like they're going to continue that tradition. They're going to have it become a day race now, so that'll be interesting to see. Of course, the Clash used to be a day race. It was primarily run then in earlier stages when they had this event, and it'll be interesting to see how that works as a doubleheader. Also, early in the season, Richmond's spring date, which became a day race this year, they're going to bring it back to a night race next season, and it seems that they base that on fan demand. But we'll move to the back half of the season. This is where a lot of shuffling happens with the playoffs and how those tracks rearrange themselves. Chicagoland was in the playoffs. They're moving out now. They're going back to a time period they were used to. July 1st is when they're going to have their day, and that's going to be NBC's first broadcast race of the season. And Daytona is going to go a week behind July 4th, which now kind of falls in the middle of the week. But Indianapolis Motor Speedway, which we normally find in late July, it's not going to be the last regular season race, and that's going to be the last opportunities for these guys to earn points and try to get themselves into the playoffs. And contrary to some reports that they might look at the road course, well, maybe they did, but they're not running the road course in 2018. They're going to remain on the oval. What we're going to see a road course in is Charlotte. They are going to be the last race of the round of 16, and they are moving it to the the road course. And you can see a picture of it right over here. It's going to be a interesting design. AJ Allmendinger tested it earlier this year, and I believe there was a video that came out showing his car on the track, and it was a very interesting look at what it's going to look like when they do take their efforts to the road course and make it a part of the playoffs. That's going to be very interesting. Las Vegas, we knew that they were going to get a second date, and we had a feeling it was going to be in the playoffs. It's going to be the first playoff race of the entire playoffs. It's going to be September 16th, so that's the first exposure these guys will get in trying to progress themselves, and they'll have the opportunity to take advantage of those playoff points, which were introduced this year, and we'll see how that plays out. Also, Richmond, which was previously the last regular season race, they will move into Chicagoland's spot, and they will be running September 22nd, and that will also be a night race as well. And then we move further along, and Dover's going to be moved into the round of 12, which was a little, I believe it's just one race back, but now it's not the elimination race anymore. And past that, it's pretty similar to what we've been seeing. Homestead Miami Speedway continues to be the last track on the schedule, and they will be the decision maker of who will be our 2018 NASCAR Cup champion. And I think that's one of the big things that might be on the minds of NASCAR fans is, why do we decide to take our efforts for getting a road course into the playoffs going to Charlotte and taking that track? I think that's I'm saying I think it's absolutely the matter of how these tracks are divided in terms of how they split their ownership of, finding the wrong words here. They all have a certain amount of races that they have a stake in. So a lot a lot of these corporations have races bought out, and they're going to have those at their disposal. That's the reason why we saw New Hampshire lose a race and Las Vegas gain one. That happened within the same corporation. They can move those races around within themselves as long as they're owners of the tracks. But in terms of shifting to a completely different track, that is not going to happen because they're under a 5-year contract that establishes that these races are going to be run within these tracks over a 5-year period. Now, I'm not sure that the Xfinity and Truck Series they might be, but I think the ownerships might be a tad different because we see tracks like Road America, Mid-Ohio, Canadian Tire, Motorsport Park. They might be differently owned than others, but within the NASCAR schedule, they still have a place, and we'll still continue to see them heading in 2018 and probably further among that. But in terms of trying to find another road course, this is going to be a temporary, which may become a permanent solution in the future, having the road course at Charlotte become a fixture of the playoffs. But until we get past that kind of contract, we got to have our resources built in, and this is where they're trying to incorporate Charlotte and make it, change it up and see what they can do with it. They're going to take a part of that, and we'll see how it turns out. It can definitely be a very exciting race. We'll just have to see because it's going to be a year and about 3 months away. But beyond that, let's move into NASCAR Hall of Fame. Wednesday afternoon, they announced the 2017 class, and here they are. And pardon me, that's actually the 2018 class. But moving from top to bottom in terms of vote getters, Robert Yates, over 90% of the vote. Legendary engine builder, team owner, several wins in NASCAR's top series. Definitely earned a spot there. Our first NASCAR race winner and champion, Red Byron, finally makes his way into the NASCAR Hall of Fame. I believe he's been on the ballot since the first class, and now he's finally made it in on his 8th try. Ray Evernham, the championship-winning crew chief for Jeff Gordon for much time, and became a team owner as well. He makes his way into the Hall. Legendary broadcaster and voice Ken Squire makes his way into the Hall. He's called many races, had many famous calls. Don't forget that 1979 Daytona 500, of course. And then the 5th member of the Hall, which it could be considered controversial just based on fan reaction that we've seen from this inductee, Ron Hornaday Jr. I believe he's a very worthy candidate for truck championships. He has definitely been a pioneer in terms of getting this series going, and he's been able to win it all in all. At some point, he had 5 straight wins in that series. That is an incredible feat. He makes his way into the Hall. Now, this vote did have to come down to a tiebreaker. At 38% of the vote, it was tied between Hornaday and Alan Kulwicki, and the panel ultimately voted Ron Hornaday in. Now, I think that several NASCAR fans believe that Alan Kulwicki should have been in, and also a number of fans also thought that Davey Allison should have made his way in. I believe he was the first ballot this year, and those guys were both in the top 3 of the next vote getters, as well as Buddy Baker, who was second out of this cut. But I'm not going to discount Ron Hornaday just because people are going to say that I think that they see the Truck Series as a minor league, and ultimately there is a lot of guys that are coming up. There's a lot of young talent there. There's also a lot of veteran presence, and they also have a big stake in how the series goes. But I don't discount the Truck Series as a minor leagues necessarily, just because there's a lot of guys that can win in those series, and Kyle Busch wins in it a lot. But really, Ron Hornaday was one of those guys that he was a grassroots guy that always worked his way through that series, and he made a lot in it. He got those 4 championships, those multiple wins, double digits. He was definitely a guy that competed hard and worked his way through, and he got some hardware in the next series is up. But just because he wasn't able to make his way all the way to the Cup Series level and be consistent in it. I don't think that this should discount the way that he races and how successful he was in it. And I still believe that, in fact, I do believe that we'll see the next guys, Alan Kawicki and Davey Allison. I believe they'll go into the Hall of Fame next year together, and that's probably going to be a very good thing to see those guys out of the 90s have their set in that year. It's just a matter of there's a lot of guys that are really deserving, and Ron Hornaday was able to get his call up. We don't see a lot of truck guys get the recognition that they should, and Ron Hornaday was definitely one of those guys that was really a pioneer in the truck series. He'd been working since the inaugural year in 1995. So good to him and to the other inductees as well. Very well deserved, a very good class this year. And since we're talking about trucks, this is a good segue. Let's move on to the NFRN Truck Series and the driver lineup. We have yet to talk about them, and they'll be racing in one of the first races today. So let's get you acquainted with the field of 36. Keith Young is a bit of a grassroots racer himself, and he'll be rotating sponsors throughout the season, and he'll be driving the number 3 Chevrolet. We've got Kevin Knight in the number 7 Pepperidge Farms Ford F-Series truck. And we'll see a couple of drivers take advantage of affiliate teams and maybe start some themselves. Hollywood is one of those drivers. He's part of Ramco Motorsports, and he'll be driving the number 8 Chevrolet. Jasper Rowles from up north, he's got the number 01 truck, sponsored by Best Buy. And moving to another Ford, number 09 is driven by Mike Simpson. We'll continue a little streak of Northerners. We got the number 12, Tyler Reed, also in a Ford. Got a lot of Fords up here in the front. And moving on to the next 6, we got the number 14 truck of Essentia, who hails from Japan. He might be able to pilot that Toyota to a couple victories over here in the States, but will also travel over to Twin Ring Motegi for the second year and make a run there as well as the Cup, and maybe he'll be able to win in front of his home crowd. Number 19 of Adam Kuhn, driving a very similar scheme to the Eris car that we see in all 3 of NASCAR's series. Steve Ray driving that slick black number 21 Chevrolet, and James Smith, a part of Thunderhawk Motorsports, got the number 24 Napa Chevrolet. Number 25 is driven by Taylor DePick, and I believe Pig Sensi Racing is the only team that was specifically formed within the NFRN Truck Series, and they'll be trying to pilot their way to a few wins. And the final of this page is the number 26 Toyota Tundra of Derek Anderline. Robbie Bell with Super 8 on the hood. He drives the number 27 Ford truck. We've also got another Ford, Trevor Nix in the number 30. Justin Lisenby in that number 31 Aqua Machine, sponsored by Hisense. Josh McCoy in the number 34 truck. He is a part of the NFRN Amateur Cup Series affiliate, Western Motorsports. Daniel Voiles in that number 36 Chevrolet. He'll see if he can pilot a few wins in his premier season. In fact, if I haven't said it before, this entire field is composed of all rookies. Not one of these guys have competed in NFRN competition, which neither of the upper 2 series can say for themselves. And finally, we round out the field with the number 38 Idaho Power Machine of Barry Watson. We move on to another driver signed on to an NFRN Elite Cup Series team. Gardner Racing has Roger Ray on hand in the number 42 Target Chevrolet. Billy Thompson in that number 46 Ben & Jerry's Toyota, and moving on to another Toyota, Ross Kispin in the number 53 truck. Stephen Carmona in that Kick Interactive number 54 Chevrolet. Emerson Sims, part of Coco Racing, which is an NFRN Amateur Cup Series affiliate. He drives the number 55 truck. And Dylan Lexton in the number 60 Ford F-Series truck. Jesse McConnell from all the way in Hawaii, he's making his way into the field, driving that number 62 Sapochi Chevrolet. Jason Langley driving the number 68 truck, that number paying tribute to Bobby Hamilton, who raced that number with TriStar Motorsports in the early 90s in the Cup and then Busch Series. Recency is the other part of Pig Sensi Racing. He drives the number 69 Chevrolet. We'll see Jim Fowler in this yellow and red number 72 Ford throughout the season. And Eagle Motorsport driver Hunter Cox with U.S. Army on the hood. Dalton Wise is going to have an opportunity to race on his home track here today at Columbia, the Missouri native, driving that number 77 machine. Ryan Parsons, another member of Western Motorsports, driving the number 79 John Deere Chevrolet. Benny Seitzer got the number 83 truck for this year, and Moses Osborne in the number 85 Pizza Hut Ford. Aaron Dumati driving that number 90 truck, very similar to a scheme Jeff Gordon ran throughout his career with DuPont on the hood. Carter Friesen, he's got the number 92 Amp Energy Chevrolet. And to round out our field, Andy Quinn in the number 96 Ford. And while we're at it, we're going to give some shout outs to our part-timers that are signed up. With the other two series, the part-timers come from the series below that are trying to race their way in based on standings, but these guys are only going to have their opportunity in the truck series, and there's no guarantees they're going to make every race. 6 of these guys have trucks by them because they were signed up by the race 1 deadline, and they will be racing today. 2 of these guys do not have those trucks by them. They will have their opportunity to race their way in starting at Pikes Peak. Adam Lewis, will see him in the number 05 Zaxby's Chevrolet that we've seen John West Townley drive before. Blake Andrews will drive William Byron's number 9 Liberty University Toyota. Carter Thiessen will be driving around in number 49 today. Derek Northrup in the 00 machine, Haas Automation on the hood. Lucas Setz has got the number 35 truck on hand today. And finally, Tyler Bate in the number 97 Carolina Nut Company Toyota. As is the case with all the series running, standings will be the determining factor in who gets what scheme. That is why during signups you were asked to rate the cars that you would like to have heading into the next series up if you were able to qualify it. And that will still be the case with these guys. As long as they're up in the standings, they will have the first priority in terms of choosing their trucks. And for right now, as far as they're getting into the race today, they will probably have these schemes on next week as well. And as mentioned before, we'll see Luke Evans and Nick Frail try to race their way in at Pikes Peak. We'll have their trucks ready for them at that race. And of course, this is your opportunity right now. You still have the opportunity to sign up. If you are not registered for a car at all in the NFRN, you can sign up, have a late sign up, and try to race your way into the Truck Series races. We might have some opportunities for some of these guys to race on their own and not have to worry about qualifying into the Truck Series. They might get their opportunity, especially if they're a really late sign up and it's becoming harder for them to find their way in. We might have some opportunities ready for them later on, but we will work with what we got now, and this is how it's going to shake up the rest of the field. So we got one more bit of surprise as we head into the racing action here today. There was one thing we hadn't announced that we were still planning on and working on, and now we're going to have it here today. And you might have seen it as you clicked onto the live stream. There's a little extra logo in the thumbnail. That is the NFRN Champions League, and that was meant to be a bit of a get-together of some of the best drivers that we saw in Season 1. Won some of the biggest events and had some of the most wins in Season 1. And then it turned out that we only had 12 returning drivers, which was a bit less than we expected. But guess what? That Clash field is now going to have a 4-race competition, and we're going to see these guys battle it out equally developed cars. They are built in exactly the same style as we saw in the former IROC series, and now they're going to be the first race here today. So we're going to see that full Clash field take part in the first round of the NFRN Champions League at Columbia, and we'll see how they do down the road. 4 races kind of spread out throughout the entire season. It's going to take a while to crown a champion there. We can say that Riki Raceway will be race 2. We're still working on the final 2 races of the series. We'll have those announced at a later time as well, but today is the first action we'll see of them, and they will lead us off. And then after that, we'll have the Truck Series run. That will give those guys a bit of a chance to take a rest before they get into their own series that they'll be racing in. The Amateur Cup Series will succeed the Truck Series race, and then to cap it all off, we've got the duels, and finally the Columbia 500 in the NFRN Elite Cup Series. So a big, exciting day of racing here today. Several hours will be devoted to this weekend, so if you're watching live with us, make sure to stay tuned because there's going to be a lot of exciting racing going on here today. But of course, if you're not watching live, make sure to go through all 4 or maybe even 5 of those broadcasts and make sure to watch them in full because it's going to be a very exciting one. And we are getting ready. Let's head over to the NFRN Champions League. Thank you all for joining us for NFRN The Drive with RVN and NFRN. I'm Colin Denton. Good night and good riddance.
Louder!